My research journal slips from my hands, pages fluttering across the polished oak floor of Father's study like scattered thoughts. The family portrait, freshly delivered and propped against his massive desk, tells the story without a single word. There I am, or rather, there I barely am, a figure painted deliberately in shadow, almost blending into the dark mahogany paneling behind the family. Father stands proud and centered, Mother elegant beside him, and Vivienne radiates in a splash of golden light that makes her the unquestionable focal point. "Oh, Celine. I didn't realize you were in here." Mother's voice floats from the doorway. I don't turn immediately, my eyes fixed on the artist's note in the bottom corner, as requested by the Hammond family, central focus on Vivienne. The words burn into my vision. "The portrait arrived early," I say, my voice steadier than the trembling in my fingers, "just in time for tonight's dinner celebration." Mother glides into the room, her practiced apologetic smile in place, the one that never reaches her eyes. She stands beside me, admiring the portrait with a satisfied nod. "Margaret really captured our essence, don't you think?" Our essence, as if my near invisibility is somehow essential to who we are as a family. 3 weeks ago, we sat around the dining table discussing this very portrait. Father's voice boomed across the imported tablecloth. "Vivienne will be featured prominently as the face of Hammond Industries' future." No one questioned it. No one looked my way. Later, as we dispersed, Mother caught my arm. "Wear something simple for the sitting, dear," she'd suggested, voice honey-sweet, "so you don't distract from your sister." Now, staring at the finished product, I understand what something simple really meant. Become the wallpaper. Why am I deliberately diminished in the portrait? The question leaves my lips softly, not as an accusation, but a genuine inquiry. My 32 years have taught me that direct confrontation only makes them defensive. Mother sighs, straightening a pearl earring. "Don't be dramatic, dear. We all have our roles, yours just isn't in the spotlight." The casual cruelty lands like a physical blow. 30 years of similar dismissals flash through my mind. Science fair victories unacknowledged, research breakthroughs met with polite disinterest, achievements systematically overshadowed by Vivienne's more marketable accomplishments. My hands stop trembling. With deliberate calm, I reach for my phone and snap a photograph of the portrait. "What are you doing?" Mother asks, a note of alarm in her voice. Before I can answer, Father's footsteps echo in the hallway. He strides in, eyes immediately lighting on the portrait. "Excellent. It's here." He circles the painting, nodding with approval. "Vivienne will love this. Where is she? Someone find Vivienne." He hasn't acknowledged my presence, despite standing 3 feet away. Mother shoots me a warning glance, silently commanding me not to create a scene before tonight's unveiling ceremony. I bend down to gather my scattered research papers, my movements unhurried and methodical. This portrait isn't a surprise, it's merely physical evidence of what I've always known. I am the Hammond who exists in the margins, allowed a place in the family provided I don't ask for equal light. Father continues discussing the portrait's placement for the ceremony, planning the optimal lighting to showcase Vivienne's prominence. If I speak up now, object to my treatment, I risk losing even this tenuous connection to my family. The foundation grant that partially funds my research hangs in the balance. Father never makes explicit threats, but consequences have always followed disobedience. I tuck my journal under my arm and straighten my spine. The realization settles over me with strange clarity. This portrait is nothing new. It's simply the first time they've made visible what has always been true. They see me as a shadow, an afterthought to the golden child. The question now is whether I'll continue to accept that role. And for the first time in 32 years, I'm not certain that I will. Half an hour later, my fingers hover over the doorknob to Vivienne's study. I need to borrow her leather portfolio for tonight's unveiling, a simple errand that shouldn't require the deep breath I'm taking. Through the mahogany door, her voice carries with practiced projection. "Yes, just feature me and Dad in the magazine, spread my sister isn't really part of the company narrative." My hand falls away from the door as if burned. Blood rushes from my face, leaving numbness in its wake. I steady myself against the wall, swallowing hard against the sudden acrid taste in my mouth. "We want to focus on the direct line of succession," Vivienne continues, voice honey smooth. "The readers of Business Frontier won't care about a researcher who isn't involved in day-to-day operations." I've suspected this orchestrated erasure for years, felt it in sideways glances and conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. But hearing it stated so plainly, so casually as if my exclusion is merely practical rather than deliberate, makes my knees weak. The words echo in my head as I walk woodenly back to my room. Every memory reshapes itself. The company newsletter that mentioned Vivienne's community service but omitted my research breakthrough. The annual reports where my contributions vanished between drafts. Father's introductions where I became my other daughter while Vivienne received her full credentials. Not accidents, not oversights, policy. Later that night, the pre-unveiling dinner stretches before me like an elegant minefield. Crystal catches the light from the chandelier, creating prisms across white linen. Mother has orchestrated the seating with surgical precision. Father, mother, and Vivienne, clustered at the head with Thomas Reynolds, editor of Business Frontier, while I'm exiled down the table between cousin Edith, who's hard of hearing, and Uncle William, who's been asking me about my college plans for 15 years despite my doctorate. Our Vivienne has shown exceptional leadership, Father announces, raising his glass, which is why the board has unanimously approved her promotion to executive vice president, effective immediately. Applause ripples around the table. I join automatically, muscle memory taking over while my mind catalogs another deliberate step in my systematic removal from the family narrative. Mother reaches into her evening bag. And to mark this special occasion, she produces a velvet box, aged and familiar. The Hammond sapphires, passed down through generations of Hammond women who lead with distinction. I recognize grandmother's necklace immediately, the one she once told me would someday be mine, because you have the Hammond intelligence. Mother fastens it around Vivienne's neck, the sapphires nestling against her collarbone like they belong there. Perfect for you to wear at the portrait unveiling, Mother adds, her eyes flickering briefly, deliberately toward me. Reynolds leans forward, wiping his mouth with his napkin. And you must be. His eyes settle on me with the polite interest reserved for strangers. Are you new to the family business? The question lands like a slap. I've attended every company function for years. I've sat across from Reynolds at no fewer than 3 charity galas, where we discussed his daughter's interest in science. This is Celine. Vivienne interjects before I can answer. My sister. She does some research that the foundation supports. Some research. As if mapping neurological responses to targeted treatments is a hobby rather than my life's work. How lovely, Reynolds says, already turning back to Father. Later, Mother corners me near the dessert table, her voice low beneath the clink of silverware. I notice you've been rather quiet tonight. Just observing. I reply, selecting a chocolate truffle I have no appetite for. Good. Her smile doesn't reach her eyes. Remember that the Foundation Grant Review Committee meets next month. It would be unfortunate if your funding faced reconsideration because of any drama tonight. The threat is velvet-wrapped but unmistakable. My research facility lease, my team's salaries, years of work all tied to family funding that could vanish with a word. I understand perfectly, I say, the chocolate turning to ash in my mouth. For a moment, I contemplate simply not attending the unveiling. What would happen if the shadow in the portrait failed to appear in person? Would anyone even notice my absence, or would it merely confirm what the portrait already declares, that I am an afterthought, barely worthy of inclusion? As guests migrate toward the grand hall for the unveiling, a hand touches my elbow. I turn to find Margaret, the portrait artist, her eyes kind beneath steel-gray hair. They insisted on the composition, she says quietly. I tried to capture your dignity despite their instructions. Her confession strikes me like a tuning fork, resonating with unexpected clarity. This small act of artistic rebellion, preserving some essence of me, despite my family's directives, feels like the first honest interaction I've had all evening. Thank you, I whisper, oddly moved. As I thank Margaret, I wonder if I should speak up at the unveiling or walk away from this family entirely. Would creating a scene finally make them see me, or would disappearing from their portrait and their lives be the more powerful statement? 3 days later, while I am at work, Vivienne's social media post appears on my phone while I'm reviewing lab results. The notification cuts through my concentration like a scalpel. Finally, a family image that shows everyone in their rightful place. Legacy leader. Attached is a cropped preview of the portrait, showing her bathed in golden light while I'm barely visible in the background shadows. My phone buzzes relentlessly as messages pour in. Cousin Marlene. Oh honey, I just saw the portrait preview. Are you okay? Dr. Williams from Father's Golf Club. Always thought your family dynamics were interesting. Even my mother's bridge partner feels compelled to comment. Some families have such curious ways of showing appreciation. Their pity lands like tiny paper cuts, stinging but too insignificant to acknowledge individually. I set the phone face down and returned to my microscope, only to find my hands trembling slightly, distorting the slide's focus. The final blow arrives via mother's perfectly timed phone call. Darling, North Shore magazine will be interviewing us immediately following the unveiling. They want to discuss the future of Hammond Industries leadership. Her voice lifts with practiced enthusiasm. Such wonderful exposure for Vivienne. And what about my contribution to the company through my research? I ask, surprising myself with the directness. A brief, telling pause. Well, that's not really the focus of the article, dear. Not the focus. Never the focus. The next morning at the lab, Dr. Franklin places the annual Hammond Foundation report on my desk, his finger pointing to the research achievements section. Celine, why isn't your name listed here? Your bioregeneration study was funded almost entirely by your family's foundation. I scan the page, finding every researcher except myself credited for the breakthrough we shared. The omission is so deliberate it feels violent. This isn't oversight, doctor. Franklin says, his weathered face creasing with concern. This is erasure. The word strikes a chord so deep it reverberates through my body. Erasure. That's exactly what they've been doing, systematically removing evidence of my contributions, my achievements, my very existence within the family narrative. That night, I canceled dinner with Vivienne, claiming a headache. It's not entirely a lie. Family gatherings have become physically taxing. My stomach clenches at the thought of attending. My breathing grows shallow in their presence. The symptoms started years ago but have intensified since discovering the portrait. Instead of suffering through another evening of carefully choreographed diminishment, I spread my journals across my apartment floor. Page after page documents my gradual removal. Photographs where I've been positioned at edges, easily cropped out, newspaper clippings of my achievements with my name, deliberately omitted from family quotes. Emails discussing company events where my participation is never mentioned. I create a digital timeline, methodically organizing the evidence. 3 decades of systematic erasure, documented with scientific precision. The pattern, once assembled, is undeniable. The unexpected happens 2 days before the unveiling ceremony. Barbara, father's secretary of 26 years, corners me in an empty hallway at Hammond Industries headquarters. Take this, she whispers, sliding a manila folder into my hands. Don't mention where you got it. Inside are yellowed newspaper clippings, my science fair victories, research breakthroughs, academic honors, all carefully preserved. In the margin of one, father's distinctive handwriting notes. Celine's approach to cellular regeneration shows remarkable insight. He notices more than he shows, Barbara whispers before disappearing around the corner. The folder weighs heavily in my hands, not with vindication but with something more complicated. The knowledge that recognition withheld is a deliberate choice, not an oversight. 2 days later, the dressing room before the unveiling ceremony hums with activity. Mother adjusts Vivienne's emerald necklace, while makeup artists apply final touches. I stand by the window, wearing the charcoal gray dress I selected against Mother's suggestions for something more subdued. Celine, there you are. Mother approaches, her eyes flickering over my attire with barely concealed disapproval. When the photographs begin, please stand at the back. The magazine wants to focus on the direct line of succession. The direct line, as if I'm some distant relation, not their firstborn daughter. Something shifts inside me, a tectonic plate moving after years of pressure. The trembling in my hands stops completely. I've been standing in the back my entire life, I say, my voice steady and clear. I won't do it anymore. Mother's smile freezes. This isn't the time for dramatics. It's not dramatics to expect basic recognition from my own family. The words flow easily now, as if they've been waiting years to emerge. I'm Hammond Industries research director. My work has secured 3 patents for this company. I exist, Mother, whether you choose to see me or not. For once, she has no practiced response. The silence between us expands, filling with 32 years of unspoken truths. Celine, she finally says, her voice softer, almost uncertain. What do you want? To be acknowledged, not placed in front, Not given special treatment, just not deliberately erased. Something flickers across her face, recognition perhaps, or the first awareness of what they've been doing all these years. Before she can respond, the door opens. Doctor. Franklin enters, followed by 6 members of my research team, all dressed in formal attire. Sorry to intrude, he says, though his expression suggests he's not sorry at all. We wanted to support our department head at this important event. Mother blinks in confusion. Department head? Yes, doctor. Franklin says firmly. Celine is the brilliant mind behind our breakthrough in cellular regeneration, the work that's bringing Hammond Industries its largest research grant to date. My team forms a protective semicircle around me, their presence a physical manifestation of my worth outside the family narrative. The ceremony begins in 15 minutes. One of the event coordinators announces from the doorway. I nod, feeling taller somehow. When I catch my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognize myself, shoulders straight, chin lifted, eyes direct. For the first time in years, I maintain eye contact with my mother without looking away first. In my purse rests a folded speech, one I've prepared regardless of whether I'm invited to speak. The front page of a scientific journal, embargoed until tomorrow, announcing a major grant my team has secured independently of Hammond family connections. The coordinator returns. They're ready for the family now. Mother extends her hand automatically, expecting me to follow her lead as always. Instead, I turn to my team. Shall we? We move toward the grand hall together. As the unveiling ceremony begins, I take an unexpected seat in the front row, instead of my assigned place in the back, feeling the weight of stares, my family's confusion, my colleagues' approval. Sometimes a shadow must step into the light to be recognized as a person. I slide my phone from my evening bag, angling it carefully beneath the table. The camera captures father, physically moving me aside, as the photographer arranges the Hammond family in a semicircle around the portrait. No one questions his hands on my shoulders as he positions me 3 steps back from where Vivienne stands bathed in professional lighting. Perfect, the photographer calls. Now just the immediate family. The immediate family, as if 32 years of Hammond blood flowing through my veins somehow makes me less immediate than others. Mother, father, Vivienne center please, the photographer continues. I capture it all. Every dismissal, every erasure. The shutter sound remains off as I document my systematic removal from my own family narrative. When father's palm presses against the small of my back, guiding me farther from the portrait, I feel the familiar heat of anger rising from my stomach to my chest. Celine? Margaret, the portrait artist, appears beside me, champagne flute in hand. I've been watching. Her eyes meet mine, professional composure cracking to reveal something like empathy. I'm sorry, the composition wasn't my choice. I nod once, throat tight. I know. From the makeshift stage, Vivienne's voice carries across the room. As the only Hammond pursuing meaningful achievement in the company. Her words drift over appreciative murmurs as I capture this moment too, the lie preserved in digital permanence. Margaret winces visibly. Your sister certainly has presence. She's had plenty of practice, I reply, my voice steadier than the trembling in my fingers. Vivienne concludes her speech to enthusiastic applause, then spots me hovering near the back wall. Her eyes narrow imperceptibly to anyone not trained by years of sisterly combat to recognize the microaggressions. Celine, are you still hanging around? Her voice carries just enough for those nearby to hear. We're doing the official family photos for the magazine spread. Something shifts in the room. Thomas Reynolds, the magazine editor who's been hovering near father all evening, turns toward me with sudden interest. Hammond. Celine Hammond, he says, as if testing the name. I don't believe we've been properly introduced. What exactly do you do in the family business? The question dangles in the air, a trap or an opportunity, I'm not yet sure which. I don't work for Hammond Industries, I reply, my voice finding unexpected strength. I lead biomedical research at Northridge Institute. We're developing targeted protein therapies for neurodegenerative conditions. Reynolds' eyebrows lift. Protein therapies? Like the work that won the Lasker Award last year? Similar approach, different application. The words flow now, muscle memory from countless research presentations. Our focus is on preventing protein misfolding in cases of early onset Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I watch 3 board members drift closer, drinks temporarily forgotten. One of them, Eleanor Whitfield, asks a surprisingly technical question about our methodology. As I answer, I notice Father's gaze locked on our growing circle. When Reynolds suddenly asked about my biomedical research, I had a choice to make. Should I downplay my work as I'd been conditioned to do, or seize this moment to step out of the shadows? Sometimes opportunity arrives disguised as an afterthought. Miss Hammond's work is rather remarkable. Dr. Franklin's voice cuts through the conversation as he approaches our group. I hadn't expected him until later. Her team has just been notified of a major research grant approval, one of the largest awarded in the field this year. Father's head turns sharply. National Science Foundation, Dr. Franklin continues, somehow making eye contact with every board member simultaneously. They don't fund speculative work. The review panel called her approach potentially transformative. Barbara, Father's longtime secretary, appears with her tablet. Oh, I was just looking for the speech notes, but I opened the wrong folder. She tilts the screen toward Eleanor Whitfield. These are actually some of Celine's early achievements. State science champion 3 years running. Published her first paper at 19. The photos I haven't seen in years glow on the screen, younger versions of me holding trophies Father never displayed. I had no idea, Reynolds says, turning toward Father, who has finally approached our group. William, why isn't Hammond Industries featuring Celine's work in your innovation materials? This is exactly the kind of cutting-edge research that elevates a corporate profile. Father clears his throat. Celine's work is separate from our core business interests. But surely related to your medical division, Eleanor counters. The protein folding applications alone could revolutionize your pharmaceutical development pipeline. A flush creeps up Father's neck as more guests gravitate toward our conversation. Vivienne stands forgotten near the portrait, champagne glass clutched too tightly between manicured fingers. Perhaps we should move on to the portrait unveiling, Father announces abruptly, voice carrying with practiced authority. If everyone would please gather around. But nobody moves. For the first time in memory, William Hammond's directive falls flat as board members and guests continue peppering me with questions about my research. Father's eyes meet mine across the circle of interested faces. Something flickers there, frustration, confusion, or perhaps the first fragile recognition that the daughter he painted into the shadows might not stay there any longer. Father corners me by the refreshment table, his hand gripping my elbow with unexpected urgency. The portrait unveiling is minutes away, and the desperation in his eyes doesn't match his controlled smile. Celine, I've been thinking, he says, voice lowered to ensure our conversation remains private. We could commission a separate portrait of you for the research division hallway. I notice his eyes darting toward the cluster of board members who have, surprisingly, gathered around Dr. Franklin. They're nodding with interest as he describes my latest research protocol. A separate portrait? I repeat, watching Father's forced smile strain at the corners. Yes, something highlighting your academic contributions. His fingers tighten slightly on my arm. Something appropriate for the science wing. Appropriate, segregated, hidden away where the important people won't have to see it. That's generous of you, I say, keeping my voice steady. It Island. He leans closer. His cologne the same scent he's worn for 30 years suddenly cloying. Remember who funds your lab's building lease. The threat hangs between us, no longer implied but laid bare. For 3 decades this pattern has repeated. Conditional inclusion based on my compliance. The family portrait was merely its most visible manifestation. About that, I say, gently extracting my arm from his grip. Dr. Franklin approaches, timing his interruption perfectly. He hands me a cream-colored envelope, the National Science Foundation logo embossed on its corner. It arrived this morning, he says, unable to contain his smile. I thought you might want it for tonight. Father's eyes narrow on the envelope as I break the seal and unfold the official letter inside. The grant amount, $8 million over 5 years, seems to pulse on the page in bold black ink. I've been awarded the Biomedical Innovation Grant, I say, meeting Father's gaze directly. Full funding, independent oversight. I allow the implications to sink in. I don't need to be in your portrait to be visible anymore. I am. His face pales slightly, the mask of control slipping for just a second before he recovers. Well, that's unexpected news. For you, perhaps. I tuck the letter into my pocket, but I've been working toward this for years. The master of ceremonies announces the portrait unveiling will begin momentarily. Father straightens his tie, a nervous gesture I've rarely seen. "We should continue this discussion later," he says, already stepping backward. "There's nothing more to discuss." I move toward the main hall where guests gather in anticipation. Mother fusses with the velvet covering draped over the massive portrait, while Vivienne poses near it for photographs. The technician I spoke with earlier catches my eye and gives a subtle nod. When called to make a few remarks before the unveiling, I approach the small podium with measured steps. Mother's confusion is evident. I wasn't on the speaking schedule. "The Hammond legacy has always been about vision," I begin, "so I'd like to share my vision with you tonight." I press the small remote in my palm. Behind me, the wall opposite the portrait illuminates with a projection, a digital montage of my scientific journey. Laboratory images, team photos, breakthrough moments captured over years of work that my family never bothered to witness. Mother frantically signals the technician to cut the presentation, but Reynolds himself blocks her path, his attention fixed on the compelling images flowing across the wall. "While the Hammond portrait shows one perspective of our family," I continue, my voice stronger than it's ever been in this house, "I wanted to share another reality, one that exists beyond these walls." The final slide appears, the cover mock-up for next month's Scientific American, featuring our lab's breakthrough treatment protocol. Reynolds' media group publishes the magazine, a fact that makes Mother's face drain of color. "Sometimes the most meaningful portraits aren't painted in oils," I say, "but in the impact we leave on the world." Applause erupts, led by Dr. Franklin and spreading through the crowd. Board members and guests drift toward my presentation, asking questions about the research, while the family portrait stands momentarily forgotten under its velvet shroud. I catch snippets of conversation as I move through the crowd. Is she starting her own foundation? The Hammond girl's research could outvalue the family business in 5 years. Why isn't she more involved in the company? Father stands alone by the portrait, his expression unreadable, as his gaze moves between the covered painting and my digital presentation. For 32 years, I've tried to decipher that face, to find some hint of approval or pride. Tonight, I realize it no longer matters what he sees. As I answer a board member's question about clinical trials, Vivienne approaches from behind. Her fingers brush my arm, her voice dropping to a whisper only I can hear. "We need to talk privately. Later." Her eyes hold something I've never seen before, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. The golden child suddenly looks tarnished in the light of my independence. I simply nod and turn back to my conversation, leaving her to wonder what I might say when we finally speak as equals. 6 months after the portrait unveiling, I stand before 24 investors in my expanded research facility. The polished presentation remote feels natural in my hand now, no trembling, no hesitation. Sunlight streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the space I designed myself. The Hammond cellular regeneration protocol shows unprecedented success rates in clinical trials, I explain, advancing to a slide showing impressive recovery statistics. We expect FDA approval by next quarter. Dr. Franklin catches my eye from the back row and gives a subtle nod of approval. Once upon a time, I would have stared at my shoes during presentations, my voice barely audible. Now I command attention with the quiet confidence that comes from being truly seen. Behind my desk hangs a wall of meaningful milestones, my research awards displayed prominently alongside a small, tasteful photo of my parents. Not looming above me as they once did, but positioned as equals in the tapestry of my life. The arrangement speaks volumes to anyone who understands the language of visual hierarchy. "Any questions?" I ask, meeting each investor's gaze directly. Later that evening, I arrive at Father's birthday celebration at the family estate. The familiar knot in my stomach has loosened considerably since I last walked through these doors. "Celine, come join the family photo," Mother calls, gesturing to the familiar arrangement, Vivienne, front and center, Father, beaming beside her, a space for me tucked discreetly behind them. "Everyone squeeze together," the photographer instructs. "Miss Hammond, could you step back a bit? You're blocking your sister." I smile, planting my feet firmly. "Actually, I'm comfortable right where I am." A moment of tension crackles through the air. Mother's eyes widen slightly. Father's jaw tightens, the subtle family signals I've decoded over decades. But instead of the expected confrontation, something remarkable happens. Father shifts slightly to create space. Mother adjusts her position. The photographer recalibrates. The world doesn't end. The portrait simply reconfigures around my presence rather than my absence. Perfect, says the photographer, capturing the new family constellation. The following week, Margaret raises her glass across a small table at Romano's, my favorite restaurant, Dr. Franklin, Barbara, and I join in the toast. To being seen clearly by those whose vision matters, Margaret says, her artist's eyes crinkling at the corners. Barbara, who slipped me that folder of newspaper clippings all those months ago, adds, I knew you had it in you. And Dr. Franklin simply nods, the mentor who recognized my brilliance long before I fully claimed it myself. 2 weeks later, in a sun-drenched studio across town, I sit for my own portrait. The artist captures me in my natural habitat, my lab coat draped casually over a chair, my research team visible through a glass partition, engaged in the work that gives my life meaning. The Science Leadership Conference called again. My assistant mentions as I review the preliminary sketch. They're hoping you'll deliver the keynote. I notice a young researcher hovering by the door, clutching a journal article. The third this month seeking mentorship from the woman who refused to remain in the shadows. Back in my office that evening, I open a small package that arrived earlier. Inside is a miniature version of the infamous family portrait that once crushed me. I place it on my desk, not centered, not prominent, just one small frame among many. As I arrange it between my latest publication and a photo of my research team celebrating our breakthrough, I wonder if true freedom comes from winning acceptance from those who once diminished you, or from no longer needing it at all. What would you choose? To keep trying to be seen by those who've overlooked you, or to build a life where new eyes appreciate your full worth?